My world shattered at 17 when Ethan Caldwell's fist collided with my jaw, sending me sprawling across the high school hallway. The laughter of his friends echoed like a cruel chorus, and the sting of betrayal burned hotter than the bruise blooming on my face. I was just a quiet kid, a nobody in the pecking order of Lincoln High, and Ethan, golden-haired quarterback king of the school, had made me his target. It was 2017 in suburban Ohio, where the air smelled of freshly cut grass and small-town pride. I was Lucas Harper, a scrawny junior with glasses too big for my face and a secret I guarded like a fragile relic. I was gay. In a town where football reigned and conformity was law, that truth felt like a death sentence. Ethan, with his chiseled jaw and easy charm, seemed to sense my difference, like a predator sniffing out weakness. His taunts started small, mocking my clothes, tripping me in the cafeteria, but by junior year, they'd escalated to shoves, punches, and whispered slurs that cut deeper than any fist. "Freak," he'd hiss, his blue eyes glinting with malice. I'd lie awake at night, replaying each humiliation, wondering why I was his obsession. High school was a battlefield, and I was losing. My grades slipped as anxiety gnawed at me. I stopped eating lunch to avoid the cafeteria gauntlet. My only refuge was the art room, where I'd sketch my pain into jagged lines and shadowed faces. Mrs. Delaney, the art teacher, noticed my withdrawal, but never pried. She just gave me extra time with the easel and a kind smile. One day, as I hid there after another of Ethan's attacks, I drew him, his sharp features twisted into a monster's snarl. It was cathartic, but it didn't erase the fear that followed me like a shadow. Ethan's cruelty peaked at the spring pep rally. I was cornered in the gym bathroom, his friends blocking the door. "You don't belong here, Harper," he spat, shoving me against the tiles. My glasses cracked on the floor, and as his fist rose again, I braced for the blow that never came. A teacher's voice interrupted, and Ethan fled with a smirk, leaving me trembling. That night, I told my parents I couldn't go back. They were supportive but clueless, small-town folks who thought bullying was just boys being boys. I switched to online school, finishing junior year in isolation. Ethan's face haunted my dreams, a symbol of everything I hated about myself. Senior year, I kept my head down, avoiding Lincoln High's halls. I graduated quietly, my diploma mailed to our modest ranch-style house. College was my escape plan. I got into a small liberal arts school in Chicago, far from Ohio's suffocating judgment. Packing my bags, I swore I'd never look back or think of Ethan Caldwell again. Chicago was a revelation. The city pulsed with life, diversity, and possibility. At college, I found friends who didn't care about my past or my sexuality. I came out to my roommate, Jake, a laid-back theater major, who just shrugged and said, "Cool, man. Want to grab pizza?" For the first time, I felt free. I joined a campus art club, painted murals for dorms, and even dated a guy named Sam for a few months. But Ethan's shadow lingered in my insecurities, a reminder of the boy who'd made me feel worthless. For years past, I was 21, a senior, with a portfolio of paintings and a cautious hope for the future. I learned to love myself, piece by piece, though the scars of high school still ached. Then, in the fall of 2021, fate threw me a curveball I never saw coming. I was interning at a Chicago art gallery, curating a local artist showcase. The gallery was a sleek, modern space with white walls and hardwood floors, buzzing with hipsters and critics. One evening, as I adjusted a canvas under the soft glow of track lighting, a familiar voice froze me in place. "Lucas? Lucas Harper." I turned, heart pounding, and there he was, Ethan Caldwell, older but unmistakable, his blonde hair slightly longer, his frame leaner but still athletic. He wore a navy blazer and a nervous smile, nothing like the cocky bully I'd known. "What are you doing here?" I managed my voice sharp. He flinched, and for a moment I saw something new in his eyes, regret, maybe shame. "I live here now," he said. "I saw your name on the gallery flyer." I had to see if it was really you. My instinct screamed to run, but curiosity or stupidity kept me rooted. Why was he here? Why did he care? He asked to talk over coffee, and against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a cozy cafe near Lake Michigan, the kind with mismatched chairs and the smell of roasted beans. Ethan looked different, less like a god, more like a man carrying a weight. He started with an apology, his voice low and unsteady. I was awful to you, Lucas. I know I can't undo it, but I'm so sorry. I stared into my latte, torn between rage and disbelief. Was this a trick? A new game? He kept talking, explaining how he'd changed. After high school, he'd gone to a state college, joined a fraternity, and lived the life he thought he wanted. But something broke in him sophomore year. A teammate came out as gay, and Ethan saw the same fear in his eyes that he'd seen in mine. It forced him to confront his own actions and his own secrets. I was jealous of you, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. You were so sure of yourself, even when you were scared. I hated that I wasn't. I didn't know what to say. Jealous? Of me? The kid he'd tormented? I wanted to laugh, to scream, to walk away. But his eyes held a sincerity I couldn't ignore. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. Not yet, just a chance to explain. As the cafe's jazz music hummed, I realized this was no longer the Ethan I'd feared. He was someone new, someone broken and trying to rebuild. We parted awkwardly, but he left me his number. I didn't call, not then. I needed time to process, to untangle the knot of anger and curiosity in my chest. Back in my apartment, I painted furiously, my brushstrokes wild and raw. Ethan's face emerged on the canvas again, but this time, it wasn't a monster snarl. It was a man searching for redemption. The canvas stared back at me, Ethan's face half-formed in shades of blue and gray. I hadn't slept well since our coffee shop encounter, my mind replaying his words like a broken record. I was jealous of you. How could someone like him, popular, confident, untouchable, envy the kid he'd crushed? I shoved the painting into a corner of my cramped Chicago apartment and tried to focus on my internship, but Ethan's number burned a hole in my pocket. Days later, I caved, not because I trusted him, but because I needed answers. I texted him to meet at a dive bar near campus, a gritty place with neon signs and sticky tables. When he walked in, wearing a worn leather jacket and that same nervous smile, I felt a jolt. Not attraction, not yet, but something unsettling. We ordered beers, and he started talking, his voice steadier this time. He told me about his college years, the pressure to be the perfect jock, the nights he drank to drown his doubts, the moment he realized he was attracted to men. I hated myself, he said, staring at his bottle, and I took it out on you. You were everything I couldn't be. His confession hit like a punch I didn't see coming. Ethan Caldwell, the golden boy, had been hiding the same secret I had. I wanted to hate him, to cling to the pain he'd caused, but his vulnerability cracked something in me. I told him about my high school years, the panic attacks, the cracked glasses, the nights I cried myself to sleep. He listened, his face pale, and when I finished, he whispered, I didn't know it was that bad. I swear, I didn't. I didn't believe him, not fully, but the raw guilt in his eyes was hard to dismiss. We started meeting more often, always in neutral spaces, parks, diners, the pier by Lake Michigan. Each time, I saw less of the bully and more of a man unraveling his past. Ethan was studying architecture, a far cry from the football fields of our youth. He showed me sketches of buildings, his hands trembling as he explained his designs. I shared my paintings, hesitant at first, but his genuine awe disarmed me. You're incredible, Lucas, he said once, and I hated how my heart skipped at his words. But trust was a fragile thing. One evening, as we walked through Millennium Park, I snapped. Why should I believe you've changed? I demanded, my voice echoing off the steel curves of the bean. You ruined my life, Ethan. How do I know this isn't some sick joke? He stopped, his breath visible in the chilly air, and looked at me with eyes that held no defense. You don't, he said. All I can do is prove it, one day at a time. His honesty left me speechless, and for the first time, I wondered if forgiveness was possible. Winter settled over Chicago, blanketing the city in snow. Ethan and I kept talking, our meetings less guarded, more like two people rebuilding something broken. He told me about his family, strict parents who expected perfection, a father who'd called him weak for quitting football. I opened up about mine, loving but oblivious, still living in Ohio, unaware of how deep my wounds ran. We were opposites in so many ways, yet our shared pain tethered us. One night at a quiet jazz club, something shifted. The music was soft, the lights dim, and Ethan's hand brushed mine on the table. I didn't pull away. His eyes met mine, searching, and I felt a pull I hadn't expected. "Lucas," he said softly, "I don't deserve you, but I want to try to be someone who does." My heart raced, torn between fear and longing. I didn't respond, but I didn't leave either. We sat there, hands touching, the weight of our past heavy but not crushing. By spring, our meetings felt like dates, though neither of us dared call them that. We explored Chicago together. Art fairs, bookstores, hole-in-the-wall taco joints. Ethan laughed more, his smile less guarded, and I found myself smiling too. But the past wasn't gone. One night, I had a nightmare. Ethan's fist, the gym bathroom, the sound of my glasses breaking. I woke up gasping, and when I told him the next day, he looked like he'd been slapped. "I'll never hurt you again," he promised, his voice fierce. I wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered like a stubborn stain. As my internship ended, I faced a choice: stay in Chicago or take a job offer in New York. Ethan was part of the equation now, whether I liked it or not. He'd become a fixture in my life, a source of warmth I hadn't known I needed. But could I trust him with my heart? The boy who'd broken me was now the man who made me laugh, who carried my art supplies, who looked at me like I was his world. It was dizzying, terrifying, exhilarating. One evening, under a blooming cherry tree in a park, Ethan took my hand. "I'm falling for you, Lucas," he said, his voice steady despite the tremble in his fingers. "I know our past is a mess, but I want a future with you." My breath caught, emotions warring inside me. Anger, hope, fear, love. I didn't answer, but I squeezed his hand, my heart teetering on the edge of a leap I wasn't sure I was ready to take. The cherry blossoms fell like pink snow, carpeting the grass around us. Ethan's hand was warm in mine, his words, "I'm falling for you, Lucas," echoing in my head. I stood frozen, caught between the boy he'd been and the man he was becoming, my heart a battlefield of trust and trauma. Chicago's spring was vibrant, but my mind was a storm. I hadn't answered Ethan that night, and he didn't push. He just walked me home, his silence respectful but heavy. Back in my apartment, I stared at my latest painting, a chaotic swirl of reds and blacks, my fear and desire bleeding onto the canvas. Could I love the person who'd once broken me? Was I betraying myself by even considering it? We kept seeing each other, navigating this fragile dance. Ethan was patient, showing up with coffee or sketching beside me in silence. One afternoon, at a rooftop art show, he pointed to one of my pieces, a vibrant cityscape, and said, "This is how you see the world, isn't it? Full of color, even in the dark." I blushed and used to being seen so clearly, but the past kept intruding. A loud laugh in a crowd, a blonde head turning too fast, and I'd flinch, expecting a fist or a sneer. Ethan noticed, his face clouding with guilt each time. One night, I told him about the job offer in New York, a curator position at a small gallery. His eyes flickered with something like fear, but he smiled. "That's amazing, Lucas. You deserve it." I asked what he'd do. He was finishing his architecture degree, applying for jobs. "I'll figure it out," he said. "But I don't want to lose you." His words stirred warmth in me, but also dread. What were we doing? Were we friends, or something more? The answer came at a summer festival by Lake Michigan. Fireworks lit the sky, their booms echoing the chaos in my chest. Ethan and I sat on a blanket, surrounded by laughing families and couples. He turned to me, his face illuminated by bursts of red and gold. Lucas, I know I've got no right to ask, but can we try this? Us. My throat tightened. I thought of the gym bathroom, the cracked glasses, the years of healing. Then I thought of his sketches, his apologies, the way he looked at me now. Against all reason, I nodded. Okay, I whispered. He leaned in, and our first kiss was soft, tentative, a promise under the stars. Being with Ethan was like learning to breathe again. We were cautious, holding hands in private, testing this new reality. He was gentle, always checking if I was okay, and I started to let my guard down. We spent weekends exploring Chicago's hidden corners, old bookstores, jazz clubs, quiet parks. I painted him again, this time with a soft smile, his eyes full of hope. But doubt lingered. My friends, especially Jake, were skeptical. He hurt you, Lucas, Jake said over beers one night. How do you know he won't again? I didn't have an answer, just a fragile faith in Ethan's change. Then came the test. Ethan got a call from an old high school friend, Mark, who was passing through Chicago. Mark was one of Ethan's cronies back then, always laughing when I was pushed or mocked. Ethan wanted me to meet him, to show how far he'd come. I agreed, my stomach churning. We met at a sports bar, the kind of place I'd avoided in high school. Mark was loud, brash, unchanged. When he saw me, his grin faltered. Harper? No way. You two are friends now. His tone dripped with disbelief, and I saw Ethan tense. The night was a disaster. Mark made offhand comments about old times, each one a jab at my past. Ethan tried to steer the conversation, but Mark kept pushing, joking about that nerd we used to mess with. I excused myself to the bathroom, my hands shaking. Ethan followed, his face pale. I'm so sorry, Lucas. I thought he'd changed too. I wanted to scream, to ask why he'd put me in this position. Instead, I said, I need space. He nodded, looking broken, and I left. For a week, I avoided him, wrestling with my anger. Was this a sign I'd been naive? My paintings grew darker, all jagged lines and stormy grays. But I missed him, the Ethan who'd held my hand, who'd listened, who'd made me laugh. I called him, and we met at our park, the cherry tree, now green with summer. I screwed up, he said, his voice raw. I thought I could fix the past by facing it, but I hurt you again. Tell me how to make this right. His honesty disarmed me. I told him I needed time, but also truth. No more surprises, no more ghosts from high school. He agreed, and we rebuilt, slowly. By late summer, I accepted the New York job, and Ethan decided to apply for architecture positions there too. The idea of us in a new city felt like a fresh start, but also a risk. Could we outrun our history? As we stood by Lake Michigan, watching the sunset paint the water gold, I leaned into him. We're doing this, aren't we? I asked. He smiled, his arm around me. Against all odds, he said. New York was a whirlwind of noise and possibility, a far cry from Ohio's quiet streets or even Chicago's familiar hum. Ethan and I moved there in the fall of 2022, me to start my curator job, him to join a small architecture firm. Our new apartment was tiny, a fifth-floor walk-up in Brooklyn with creaky floors and a view of a brick wall, but it was ours. We painted the walls a soft blue, hung my art, and taped Ethan's sketches beside them. It felt like a home, but also a gamble. Our past still a shadow we couldn't fully shake. My job at the gallery was demanding but thrilling. I curated exhibits, met artists, and felt like I was finally building something of my own. Ethan was adjusting too, his days filled with blueprints and site visits. At night, we'd cook together, badly, laughing over burnt pasta and talk about our dreams. He wanted to design sustainable buildings. I wanted to open my own gallery someday. But the weight of our history lingered. Some nights, I'd wake from nightmares of high school, Ethan's old sneer haunting me. He'd hold me, whispering apologies, and I'd wonder if love could ever fully heal those wounds. We were open about our relationship now, holding hands in Central Park, kissing in dimly lit bars. New York's diversity made it easier, but not everyone was kind. One evening, a stranger muttered a slur as we passed, and I felt Ethan tense beside me. Ignore it, I said, but his jaw stayed tight. Later, he admitted it reminded him of his old self, the boy who'd used words like weapons. I hate that I was that person, he said, his voice breaking. I kissed him, not because it erased the past, but because it anchored us in the present. Our first big fight came that winter. I'd been working late, stressed about a gallery opening, when Ethan suggested I was shutting him out. You're always at the gallery, he said, his voice sharp. Am I even part of your life here? I snapped back, accusing him of not understanding my pressure. The fight escalated, old wounds reopening. Maybe you're still the guy who hurt me, I shouted, regretting it instantly. Ethan's face fell, and he left for a walk. When he returned, we talked, really talked. I admitted my fear of losing myself in us. He confessed his terror of losing me. We made up, but the fight left a crack, a reminder of how fragile we were. Spring brought a new challenge. Ethan's parents were visiting. They didn't know about us, or that he was gay. Back in Ohio, they'd been strict, traditional, expecting their son to marry a nice girl and settle down. Ethan was nervous, pacing our apartment as he planned to come out to them. I offered to be there, but he wanted to do it alone. I need to own this, he said. I waited at a cafe, my stomach in knots, sketching nervously on a napkin. When he texted me to meet them for dinner, I braced for the worst. Dinner was at a small Italian place, the kind with checkered tablecloths and candlelight. Ethan's parents, Diane and Robert, were polite but stiff, their smiles not reaching their eyes. They asked about my job, my art, but avoided mentioning Ethan and me as a couple. Halfway through, Diane said, Ethan, we just want you to be happy, but this is a lot to process. Robert stayed silent, his fork scraping his plate. Ethan reached for my hand under the table, and I squeezed back, my heart aching for him. Later, he told me they hadn't rejected him outright, but they needed time. It hurt, but it was a start. Summer in New York was electric, street festivals, rooftop parties, long walks through Brooklyn. Ethan and I grew closer, our love a quiet strength. We started planning a future, a bigger apartment, maybe a dog. But the past resurfaced when I got a call from my mom. She'd run into Ethan's old friend Mark at a grocery store in Ohio. He asked about you, she said. Said he heard you and Ethan were together. Her tone was cautious, confused. I hadn't told my parents about Ethan, not wanting to explain the impossible. I promised to visit soon, to tell them everything. The visit to Ohio was tense. My parents were warm but baffled, their questions careful. He hurt you, Lucas, my mom said, her eyes worried. How do you trust him? I told them about Ethan's change, our love, but their doubt mirrored my own lingering fears. Back in New York, I confronted Ethan. What if they're right? What if we're fooling ourselves? He looked at me, steady and sure. I'm not that guy anymore. I'll spend my life proving it if you let me. His words were a lifeline, and I clung to them. By fall, we were stronger, our love a choice we made daily. We attended a pride event, our first as a couple, and I felt a joy I'd never known. Ethan, in a rainbow shirt, laughed as we danced in the street, and I realized I was healing, not just from him, but from the boy I'd been, scared and alone. We were writing a new story, one where love didn't erase the past, but built something better from its ruins. Pride was a revelation, a riot of color and courage that wrapped Ethan and me in its embrace. We danced under a sky streaked with confetti, our hands locked, our laughter louder than the music. For the first time, I felt like we weren't just surviving our past, we were transcending it. Back in our Brooklyn apartment, life settled into a rhythm. My gallery job was thriving. I curated a show featuring queer artists, pouring my heart into it. Ethan's architecture projects were gaining notice, his designs bold yet sustainable. We were building a life, piece by piece, but the past wasn't done with us. One evening, I found an old sketchbook from high school, tucked in a box from Ohio. The pages were filled with angry drawings, Ethan's face twisted in cruelty. I sat on the floor, tears falling, as the memories flooded back. Ethan found me, his face crumpling. I did that to you, he whispered, kneeling beside me. "How can you love me?" I touched his cheek, my voice steady. "Because you're not that person anymore. And I'm not that scared kid." We decided to face our history head-on. Ethan suggested visiting Lincoln High to see where it all began. I hesitated, the thought of those halls making my skin crawl, but I agreed. We needed closure. On a crisp fall day in 2023, we drove to Ohio, the landscape familiar yet distant. The school looked smaller, less menacing, but my heart raced as we walked inside. The hallways smelled of wax and teenage angst, unchanged from 6 years ago. We stopped at the gym bathroom, the tiles still cold and gray. Ethan took my hand. "This is where I lost myself," he said, "and where I'm promising you, never again." I nodded, tears in my eyes, feeling a weight lift. We met Mrs. Delaney, my old art teacher, who still taught at Lincoln. She hugged me, her eyes warm. "You've done so well, Lucas." When I introduced Ethan as my boyfriend, her smile faltered, then softened. She'd known about the bullying, had seen my pain. "You've both grown," she said, and it felt like absolution. We left her a painting I'd made, a vibrant abstract of two figures, entwined, rising from shadows. It was us, our story. Back in New York, Ethan's parents reached out. They wanted to try again, to understand. We invited them to our apartment for Thanksgiving, a leap of faith. The day was tense but hopeful. Diane complimented my art. Robert asked Ethan about his work. They didn't embrace us fully, but they listened, and when they left, Diane hugged us both. "We're learning," she said. "It wasn't perfect, but it was progress." Our biggest challenge came that winter. My gallery offered me a promotion, director of a new branch in San Francisco. It was my dream, but it meant leaving New York. Ethan's firm was thriving here, and I couldn't ask him to uproot his life. We sat on our couch, the city's lights glittering outside, and talked for hours. "I'll go with you," he said finally. "I can freelance, start over. You're my home, Lucas." I cried, overwhelmed by his sacrifice, but also scared. What if we failed? What if our past caught up? We moved to San Francisco in spring 2024, renting a small house with a view of the bay. The city was alive, welcoming, and we felt free in a way we hadn't before. I threw myself into the gallery, while Ethan built a freelance career, his designs winning local awards. We adopted a rescue dog, a scruffy mutt we named Jasper, who followed us everywhere. Life wasn't perfect. There were fights, doubts, moments when old fears resurfaced, but we faced them together. One evening, as we walked Jasper along the Golden Gate Bridge, the sunset painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Ethan stopped. He pulled a small box from his pocket, his hands shaking. "Lucas Harper," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I was your worst nightmare once, and I'll spend my life making up for it. Will you marry me?" I froze, the wind carrying my tears. The boy who'd broken me was now the man who'd rebuilt me, piece by piece. "Yes," I whispered, and he slid a simple silver ring onto my finger. We kissed, Jasper barking at our feet, the city cheering us on. Our wedding was small, on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, with Jake and a few friends from New York and San Francisco. My parents came, their smiles genuine now, and Ethan's parents too, their acceptance tentative but real. As we exchanged vows, I spoke of forgiveness, of love that defies odds, of a future we'd fight for. Ethan promised to honor me, to heal what he'd broken, to love me fiercely. We danced under string lights, our laughter mingling with the waves. Looking back, our story is a tapestry of pain and redemption. Ethan wasn't just the bully who made my life hell. He was the man who taught me love could be stronger than hate. Together, we proved that even the darkest beginnings can lead to a beautiful end against all odds.